20th century. This is the 1920s. These are one of the first radios. These are two different radios. They transmitted and you received by having to put on the earphones, okay? These are ICA Victor and Westinghouse, and these are all vacuum tubes, of course. And this was, you know, you can imagine what life was like without a radio. And I mean, you didn't know any different, but when you finally got a radio, the whole world was at your fingertips. It was a big thing. This spear-like device on top, that was what a British sergeant would have carried with him. That was a symbol of authority, and it was also a weapon. And when you lined the soldiers up, the long, thin line, you would line up to that halberd, and that's what he would hold up. And that would have big multicolored tassels on it and things so you could very vividly see it. What you have over here, this beneath it, this is what predated the flintlock that I showed you earlier. This is called a matchlock. I don't know if you can see this clearly. Can you see this okay clearly up here? This is a matchlock. This is before the flintlock was invented. Now this is the same principle, but you see how you fired it is you open this up and you put gunpowder in here. You have a touch hole, but you can't do anything with it. You could cover it up in the hopes that it wouldn't blow away. But as soon as you wanted to use it, you opened it up, your powder could blow away in the wind. And this trigger, when you pulled this trigger, you had a rope that was tied around your shoulder, and it came up through this device here. When you pulled it, and you lit the end of it. It was like a fuse, and it would come down and touch the powder that was there and ignite it. But the problem with that was you had gunpowder all around you, and you had a lit, everybody's got these lit wicks, you could cause a big explosion. Or your powder could blow away, or at night you could be seen with a lit wick. So these matchlocks were used for hundreds and hundreds of years, from the beginning of the use of gunpowder right up to about the 1500s, okay, when they had the matchlock that replaced it. The matchlock was a huge, as I said before, a huge, huge step forward. So this is from 1550. This is a German matchlock. This musket here is a British Brown Bess. This is a real one. I showed you a reproduction earlier. This is from the mid-1700s, and this is what the British would have used in the 7 Years' War, the Revolutionary War, and the War of 1812. This one beneath it is a Charleville, which was what the Americans used. It was provided to them by the French in the Revolutionary War. And then the one beneath it is a blunderbuss. You've seen pictures where the pilgrims, they have those big round openings at the end of their muskets. That was before they had shotguns. And that was a scatter gun. And that's why they call them blunderbusses. This is a replica, obviously, of a Sovereign of the Seas. This was the largest battleship in the world in 1638. It was built by Charles I. And if you know anything about history, there was the English Civil War took place in 1642 until 1651. This ship was one of the causes of the Civil War. This ship was so expensive. It had 105 guns, cannon, and it had a crew of several hundred men. And the cost of a warship in the early 1600s was about 6,500 pounds. This warship cost 10 times that. It was almost 66,000 pounds, and he bankrupted the treasury. And Charles I did, and that's what and then he put a ship tax on all the people to help pay for the ship. This ship was a top #1 ship of the line until it fought from 1638 until about 1697. So this had a long, long life, this ship. This ornamentation that you see here, with all these adornments on here, cost 6,500 pounds. That was the price of an actual warship in those days. So he spent just on these frills that you see all over it, the adornment was the price of an actual warship. So this was quite a ship. And these are British 12-pounders. Okay, this is the cannon of the day in the late 1700s and right through the Napoleonic period into the American Civil War in the 1860s. This is an American poster, recruiting poster for the American Revolution, and this is their manual of arms and what they were paid, etc. Up here we have two very rare medals. The Battle of Waterloo was fought in 1815, and of course that was the downfall of Napoleon. And who fought against Napoleon was the Duke of Wellington, British, and also the Prussians, Blücher, fought against them. And this medal up here is from a Private Henry Dobb of the 51st Regiment who fought at the Battle of Waterloo. And this is a medal from Conrad Mueller who fought with the Prussians in the Battle of Waterloo. That was the first battle that the British Army gave out, the British government gave out medals for. And their names are inscribed on the side. And that's quite a rare piece. Over here, this is a uniform here from a British soldier during the War of 1812. Again, I mentioned earlier why the British always used red was because that was the cheapest color to dye. It was the easiest color. Sometimes you'll hear people say because it disguised the color of blood and things like that, but it wasn't that. It was because it was cheaper to dye. And that's why if you see anybody that's higher up in the ranks, they would have blue or some other color that they signified that they had higher standing because it was more complicated and costly to dye it. Now over here, starting into World War I, here you have the French helmets that they used in World War I. Up here you have the medals from a French officer who fought in World War I at many different battles. They're all identified there. And this is what the Germans, what they wore when they started the war in 1914. They went to war with these pickelhaubes. These are called Pimple Heads, and they very rapidly could see that these were too ornate. You know, in the first 2 months of the war, there were over 1 million casualties. So they very quickly went from ornate like this down to very simple and much more protective covering like this. In the interim, they used this, what they call ersatz. Ersatz means make-believe. So they started the war with metal, they went to felt, and then they went to the full head covering. Then you have here, you know, this is the doughboys who fought with the American soldiers in 1917. Every doughboy going to France was given one of these books, which has all the different English conversion to French phrases. This is an interesting book here. This was printed in 1917 before the war was over. So it's interesting in this on Empire Day, which is now Queen Victoria's birthday. In those days that was called Empire Day. This was used to explain to the students and to people why Canada was in that war. Then over here you've got, this is World War I. This is what a flyer would have worn in World War I. You can tell World War I flyers because they don't have anything over the ears because they didn't have radio communications then. So when you see a full flap like this, it means it's usually World War I. And then this is going into World War II. These are all the different German helmets. This is from North Africa, Rommel, and this particular helmet here was used with the anti-aircraft people shooting their 88s at the bombers that were bombing Germany. And this is a British, Canadian, Australian helmet in World War II. I mentioned earlier that the Army Air Corps, this is what a flyer would have worn in the Army Air Corps, American. This is British, Sandhurst from their military college. This is British officer artillery. This is American Vietnam War. This is Japanese from World War II, right here. This is what the soldiers would have worn. This was taken off a German soldier by Ed Stilson, who fought in France and Holland, and he gave that to me. And then down below here, you have different helmets and hats from the American Civil War. This is the Italians in World War II, Mussolini. French Foreign Legion. Again, we look at the British Canadian. This is an interesting helmet here. This is called a turtle. You would have thought that the British were wearing helmets like this on D-Day, but a lot of them, they wore these helmets. They were called turtle. They gave you much more protection than these helmets did.